Welcome back to Grit Gym. Today is Wednesday. We're right in the middle of the week. If you guys didn't get a chance to watch that video with Rachel yesterday about social media, I think that there's some real golden nuggets in there from a mindset category of taking responsibility for your own life. Especially from Rachel, she really threw down some good ones. But today I was kind of struggling. Like, what do I talk about? What do I talk about? What do I talk about? And it does seem like there is a little bit of a self-victimization around the social media thing, just in general. And it seems to be an idea that is very perpetuated by our society today, and I don't know if it was always the case and this is just a new thing or if it's always been the deal. But today's kind of a little bit of a more mindset presentation that I threw together. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it kind of has like three different ideas kind of converged into one. But I talk about the self-victimizing thing and trying to dampen that down as much as I can and take full responsibility for your own life and everything that happens in it. And the thing with self-victimization is that it's an easy idea that gets thrown around and gets a lot of attention. It's like, oh yeah, I have that. And what you'll hear is you ask somebody how their day is going, and they go, oh, it's going pretty good with all things considered. And it's like, that's like almost bait, that's basically an invitation to the all things considered. Like, I'm supposed to follow up with, oh, is everything okay? So that they can then dump all their garbage on my head. And I got some in my throat. But I think that a lot of people are this way. And I don't want to make this into a political thing. And I really don't, because I don't think that this is a political matter. I think this is a mindset thing. The self-victimization thing is very easy to go into. I think it's a very, very easy, I think it's a trap, but a very simple trap that grabs a lot of us and keeps us there, me included, because I think it's extremely sneaky. I think it's so sneaky that we don't even know that we don't know that it's happening until someone points it out. And so the reason that I'm talking about this is because I refuse to be a co-conspirator in your self-sabotage. And I think that that is what self-victimization does. And the reason that I think that is because I have to sit there and ask myself, how is this serving me with anything that I do? So when I go, if you were to go to a place like, if you were to say, I'm not where I want to be because, I don't care how you finish off that sentence, unless you say, because I haven't taken the necessary action to push myself to where I need to be. I haven't done the things in my life to get myself where I need to be. I haven't taken full responsibility for my health to get myself where I need to be. I haven't invested in my mind to get myself where I need to be. Unless you say that, unless you take full responsibility, then I think you're being a conspirator to your own self-sabotage. And if you say, with all things considered, and you ask other people around you to conspire with you on that self-sabotage, and then they join you, that's the worst thing. And I think it's really easy to do in today's world where everybody's talking about empathy. And the thing with empathy is that there's a time and place, obviously, but ultimately, maybe not ultimately, I need to backtrack here a little bit. On some level, you're patronizing the person that you're dealing with. To say, I know exactly what you mean. Not really. You don't know what's going on in my head. I don't know what's going on in your head. Not really. I will try to understand as best I possibly can, but ultimately I cannot be inside your head experiencing exactly what you're feeling. Now, I don't think that empathy is a bad thing, but I do think that empathy gets taken a little bit too far. I don't have to drown in the water with you in order to help you. That doesn't help anybody. That just is both of you lose-lose. Remember, in a cooperative relationship, either both parties win or both parties lose, because even if you win, the relationship lost, which means you lose. In a competitive scenario, there is a winner and a loser. Very, very clear. Now we are competing. There is a winner and there is a loser. We're keeping score. There is a right. There is a wrong. I'm going to try to do everything I can to prove you're wrong and that I'm right. You're going to try to do everything you can to prove that I'm wrong and you're right. You're going to try to score more points. Anyway, we're back. But in a competition, I think this is something that even with the self-victimization, I think when we really get back and we keep scaling back to the source of all of this stuff, I think it's going to come back to clarity eventually. I think if you really dig down and you really get clear on what's going on, you'd go, well, I'm not actually a victim, am I? It is my responsibility, isn't it? Yeah, I think that that's what we would actually come. And I could be wrong there. I don't know. Time will tell. I mean, maybe even time won't tell. Maybe we never come to the conclusion of this. Maybe there is no right or wrong answer. I don't really know, but the question in my head is, who does it serve? And there's so many little dances that the victim does that gets them further down the path of being a victim. If you have more fat on your body than you'd like, and you want to play the victim game around that fat, and say, well, I can't do this stuff because I'm fat. I can't get a good job because I'm fat. I can't do this because I'm fat. Well, what do we got to do? We got to tackle that scenario. We got to take full responsibility for it. It's because of what I'm putting in my mouth. It's because of the lack of actions that I'm taking. It's because if you blame it all on genetics, it's not going to serve you. It might have something to do with your genetics, but looking at your genetics and blaming it 100% on your genetics is a bad. It does not serve you. It does not serve you. And if you play the victim game, you will constantly find someone to blame. This is one of the dances. You'll find someone to blame. Who's to blame? And one of the reasons I don't like to be a co-conspirator is because I know that if I'm going to be a co-conspirator, then I'm going to pull more people that are playing that self-victim game into their scenario, and then I'm more likely to be the person blamed for their self-victimization. So I used to, for instance, I used to do Rachel and I were watching a show last night. We were watching a show on TV, and the girl that the guy is dating is just reminds me exactly of one of my ex-girlfriends that would pull all this manipulative stuff, and if you left her apartment because you wanted to go be by yourself, she'd be like, yeah, whatever, and just walk away, like things like that. It was always like this really kind of like competitive, like if you weren't there, like all the time, and she would constantly say, you make me happy, you make me happy, you make me happy, or you made me sad, you made me sad, you made me sad. Like, I don't want to be responsible for your thoughts, feelings, actions, behaviors, and I don't want you to be responsible for mine. I don't want that kind of power. Why? Because the second that that you don't think that I match up to what you thought I was giving you, who's to blame? Me. I don't want to be the blame for your responsibility. So something that the victim will do is they will blame things that are not there. They'll blame the genetics. They'll blame the fitness industry. They'll blame the food industry. They'll say McDonald's is the reason I'm fat. No one forced you. No one put a gun to your head and said, go eat McDonald's every single meal. No one forced that food down your throat. You made your choices, and they added up over time until this happened. Now, that sounds harsh to some people, or sounds like a wake-up call, or it sounds like reality, or it sounds objective. I think it just is. I don't think that there should be, don't attach an emotion to it. Be extremely objective with this stuff. And then ask yourself, how does it serve you? And then also, who does it serve? If we looked at a situation where obvious victims, Auschwitz, Jewish people, obvious victims, right? Terrible thing that happened in our history. Really, our history is laden, just full of really awful, nasty, terrible things. But let's look at Auschwitz. Let's say that because this is the people that were oppressed, they were victims, no doubt about it. I think you would have a hard time saying these weren't victimized people. If they aren't, then who is? So you're looking at them. How does it serve them to have for them to consider themselves victims? This is the trippy part. This is the trippy part. So stick with me for a second. This is a really trippy part. But who would it serve for them to say, we have no power, we can't have good attitudes, we can't ever be, this is terrible, we should just give up? The only people that would serve would be their oppressors. And this is a people that were real victims, that were not their own perpetrator. They had a perpetrator and that they were the victim of. And it's a bad deal. It was a terrible, awful, nasty, terrible thing. But who would it serve for them to consider themselves victims of the scenario that had no power over anything that was going to happen? It would only help their oppressors, not the oppressed. It wouldn't help them at all. It would help the oppressors, because then they were basically just saying, yes, you have full power over me, relinquishing every bit of power that they have. And I think on a much smaller scale, that's what's happening when you say, it's not my fault. It's not my fault that this happened. It's not my fault that happened. It's not my fault that I'm fat. It's not my fault that I'm healthy. It's not my fault that we won the championship. It's not my fault that we lost the game. It's not my fault that this happened. It's not my fault that... I think that's a very dangerous avenue to play if you want to have a big, bold, incredible life. And I think that people around you, you'd play this game and you will gain just massive people around you that are willing to conspire with you on this. So if you take suicide into consideration, people like to say that suicide is a victimless act. I'm like, it's not victimless. And I'm not talking about their family or their friends. I'm talking about there is a person that got hurt here. There's a person that literally died. and there's also a perpetrator, and they just happen to be the same person. They just happen to be the same person. So it's not a victimless crime. There is a victim and there is a perpetrator. They just happen to be the same person. But if you have a situation like that, like I weirdly have been in a scenario where parents have come to me. I don't know why this happened, but this happened multiple times where parents have come to me and said, "Hey, will you sit down with my kid and talk with him for a little bit?" And I'm always like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And they're like, "Well, they've expressed these suicidal thoughts, and I don't know why, but I think that they'll listen to you." And I'm like, what? Like, think of that. Think of being like 25, 26, 27 years old, and some parent comes to you and says something like that, and you're like, I don't know if I can do that, but I'll do my best, but I don't know, I can't promise you anything. And they're like, I'm not expecting anything from you, just please, just sit down with my kid, talk with him for a little while. I'll pay you for your time. I'm like, I'm not taking money for your time to try to talk your kid out of committing suicide, but I'm also not going to promise to try to talk them out of anything. I swear that I will listen to them. And so kid would sit down, and this one little girl, there's multiple kids that said something like this, but they were like, if it's going to be like this for the next 50, 60, 70 years, then why would I want to live it at all? And I was like, man, that's a hard one, kid. I don't know. Why would you? And I didn't sit there and try to like talk them back into wanting to live, or tell the cliche like, oh, but it'll get better. Like, they think that that's bullshit. They don't believe you. Little kids know when we're bullshitting them, and they know that it might not get better. And not like others, they're like, it might not get better. You might feel like this for another 50, 60 years. And that sounds like really weird. Like, why wouldn't I give them some hope? Why wouldn't I try to up it? But they appreciated that. All the kids, by the way, have not tried to commit suicide since they had that conversation. I don't think that was because of me. I think it was because I gave them responsibility of their life. I gave them power over their own life. I gave them power in the decision. I didn't sit there and say, you have no power over this thing. You have no choice. You can't do that. I just sat there and listened, and I was like, well, I don't know. I don't have any of the answers. I don't know. I don't know if it'll get better. I don't know. And we had these really nice long conversation. One of them we only had one conversation, but the few other ones we had multiple conversations. But anyway, the thing is that back to the self-victimization thing, because I'm getting off topic there. But the thing is the question is, how is it serving you? How is it serving you to not put 100% of the responsibility back on you? And how is it serving you to put 100% of the responsibility back on you? Because now you're the pilot of your own ship. You get to say what you do, what happens in your life. You get to have power over the scenario. Nobody else gets to do that. You do. And if you allow power to go out to everybody else, then you don't keep that power. And if you allow power to go out to everybody else, now you have this amount of blame that you can put on anybody else. And when you put that blame out there, you take power away from yourself. And when you take power away from yourself, if you don't, to me, I want to be a joyful, powerful, lovable person. And by powerful, I'm not talking about the manipulative power. I'm not talking about tyranny. I'm not talking about being able to beat somebody up. I'm talking about real power, when somebody gets mad at you and you don't have to join them in their anger. I'm talking about not being a co-conspirator. I'm talking about deciding when is empathy all right. So for instance, in my job, if I'm extremely empathetic all the time, and I look at an exercise and I know that it sucks to do, if I'm super empathetic, I'm like, well, yeah, you don't have to do that. Or if you're a parent and you're super empathetic, you do things in the short term, like discipline your child, because in the long term, it's going to have these huge benefits, right? So empathy isn't an all the time, 100%, never do it sort of thing. I think usually empathy is a good thing, but at the same time, we got to look at this. It's kind of like the selfish and selfless thing. Are you going to be selfish sometimes? You better be. Are you going to be selfless sometimes? Sure. Yeah, of course. Is it better to be selfless than selfish? I don't think so. I think that they are not a balance. I think that they are something that you have to simultaneously practice. And I think that if you put you first, you're better at all the things that make you great, and you're a better service to all those that you care about. But in any of this stuff, you come into Grit Gym, I guarantee you, I'm not going to be a co-conspirator in your self-victimization. Oh, I'm fat because of my genetics. Are you? Oh, I'm unhealthy because I haven't gotten off the couch in 6 years. Now we might be onto something. There's a difference there. I'm doing fine, all things considered. Okay, great. How's your workout going? It's going well, all things considered. Yeah? Well, keep working hard. Like, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, really? Why is your life so bad? That's not my job, for one. That's your job. It's very clear. Like, I don't take any of the responsibility for any of my clients' success, and I don't take any responsibility for any of my clients' failures, because that would be taking power away from them. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they get where they want to go, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they get there in a safe manner. But it's a shared responsibility. It has to be both. I don't believe that there are victims in this game, and I do believe that there are victims. There are such things as being a victim, but like the self-victimization thing, if you're being your own perpetrator of your own victimization, then we've got a problem. We've got a big problem. So the question is, how does it serve you? And then who does it serve? Even if you are the victim of the scenario, how does it serve you, and who does it serve? So if to go back on this to kind of recap here, and then I'm gonna hop off the show, but if you think of the people of Auschwitz, a real victim scenario, no doubt about it. If we can't call them victims, I don't know who we could call victims. Who would it serve for them to consider themselves powerless? Who for the Jewish people that were being oppressed? Who would it serve for them to consider themselves powerless, to have no hope, to have no say, to have no ability? It would only serve their oppressors. And so when I think of that, I'm just like, man, this is so hard to say, but how do you have a positive attitude at Auschwitz? And the interesting thing is, if you look up Viktor Frankl, in some of his writings, this is kind of where I'm taking some of this stuff from. So a guy he actually was a doctor that was in there that helped a lot of the people that were oppressed during that time. And it's interesting, like, how do you keep a positive attitude in the face of all that stuff? That's an extremely powerful being right there. That is a guy who is extremely powerful. It doesn't matter if he's a guy or a girl. It's extremely powerful. I think we can learn a lot from somebody like that. But anyway, I refuse to be a co-conspirator in anybody's self-victimization. And if they are self-victimizing and you feel kind of like an empathy towards them, you might want to shut that off. Or you can understand that they are also being their own perpetrator. And if someone was beating up, on somebody that I care about, I would come unglued like that. I would come. I know what I'm like. I've seen. The only real bad like fight scenarios that I've ever been in was because somebody that I cared about got shoved down, got something happened to him. Anyway, would you, if your friend was doing that to your friend, like if Amy, let's say hypothetical Amy is beating up on Amy, are you going to sit there and let Amy beat up on Amy? You better stop her. You better stop her. Do not be a co-conspirator in that and be like, oh, it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay to do that. But anyway, maybe that's the title of the show. I refuse to be your co-conspirator. But no, self-victimization is a really bad deal. It causes people to. I think it's a not healthy thing. That's my opinion. It doesn't have to be everybody's opinion, but it's very easy for the victim to blame. They have to have someone to blame because they couldn't be responsible for their own perpetration. Not if they're going to be a victim. It's a paradox. So, who does it serve? How does it serve them? It is our fault. And it is our responsibility, and there's plenty of bait sitting around out there. But at Grid Gym, we refuse to be co-conspirators. Anyway, I'm going to hop off the show because I don't have a good conclusion for this one, but please take the time, like, comment, share, send this out to everybody that you know. This one could get me in hot water on some level. If it does, whatever, it could be kind of fun it's kind of fun to get some hate every now and then and ask people questions because I really like getting to the bottom of their perspective. And usually we agree more than what the person typically thinks up front. But anyway, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. We'll be Eric is on the show tomorrow. You want to tune in for that one. I think it's going to be really good. We'll see you guys tomorrow.